Welcome to the Common Sense Think Tank. I'm your host, Mark Gillar. My guest today is none other than Josh Bernstein. Josh is kind of an all purpose political commentator. He's also the author of Preserving Liberty. There it is. And we'll have another graphic come up with that as well. Josh, welcome to the Common Sense Think Tank.
It's great to be back on the program with you, Mark.
You are a Republican, so I'm assuming the common sense is mandatory.
Oh yes, absolutely. Yeah, it was ingrained in me at a pretty young age, which is kind of amazing because growing up in New Jersey with both liberal parents, it's kind of amazing that it happened. But I guess once I left the New Jersey area and came out to Arizona in late 1996 and actually understood what the real world was all about, that's when I kind of got more into politics and certainly developed more of a conservative leaning.
And how do your parents feel about that?
Well, my father, may he rest in peace, is no longer with us. So he was kind of apolitical, not really into a lot of different stuff. And my mother is a stark raving liberal. So it's been tough,
We
but
we have some family
we
issues going
persevere.
on. Yeah, we have some family issues going on as well. It's not fun, and it's a shame that the country is so divided right now. But then again, and some of my listeners have heard me and viewers have heard me say this ad nauseum, but I don't know how they were able to convince almost half the country that drag queens in kindergarten classrooms were a good idea, or that boys and girls sports was a good idea, or that open borders are a good idea, and that there's 600 different genders and all these other things. I mean, it's not just a violation of common sense; it is absolute lunacy.
Yeah.
And speaking of lunacy, you have pointed out that the Democrats are absolutely wrong when they say that this whole thing about deporting Hamas sympathizers and people who are promoting Hamas in the United States is a free speech issue. You say no. Why?
No, it's definitely not, because Section 212 of the Immigration and Naturalization Act clearly points out that if you're here on a student visa or any type of visa for that matter, and you engage in any type of activity that could be seen as seditious, treasonous, or any type of alignment with any communist group or totalitarian authoritarian groups, and you can be immediately deported and have your green card revoked. So just as Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, recently said many times actually that you're here as a guest, and if you come in to my house and you put your feet on the couch and you get mud all over my carpets, I'm going to throw you out. And so
Hmm.
the same thing, he says, if you're coming here for ruckus, then you're going to leave. And this is not a free speech issue at all because he's in violation of Section 212 of the Naturalization and Immigration Act.
Yeah. I just saw a clip today of Abby telling Scott Jennings that everybody deserves due process, including illegal immigrants, and that there is no legal way to deport people who haven't been given their due process. Your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are you broke the law the second you came across the border. If you didn't
Hmm.
come here the right way, then you don't have any due process rights. So if you snuck across the border as an illegal alien, you don't have any rights. You're not doing anything. You've broken the law at the first thing that you've done when you've come into this country. And in Preserving Liberty, I talk about the irony, if you will, of the fact that if you are caught as an illegal alien in Mexico, you are either immediately deported or you could be jailed for up to a year. And
Hmm.
if you sneak back in again and you're caught a second time, it's 10 years hard labor. But if you sneak into the United States of America multiple times, at least in the past, you got free health care, you got a
Hmm.
hotel room, you got in some cases an EBD card, you got free diapers and formula and voting rights. I mean, you name it, they roll out the red carpet for you. So
Five
thankfully, that is
star
not the case anymore.
hotel, a 5-star hotel, an Obama phone, you name it. It's why would anyone not want to come here? I
Right.
mean, if I were in another country and I heard they were giving away stuff like that, I'd be on my way. Let's stay on deportation if we can. You probably heard, in fact, I'm sure you've heard, that the 350 Venezuelans who were going to be sent back that's now been blocked by a district judge. And this is becoming a horrible pattern where district judges think they have more power than the president of the United States. As I understand it, you're not a district judge can only render a decision that enjoins the parties to the original case. They can't do this coast to coast federal ruling. So what are your thoughts on that? Where do you see this going? Are we just going to have to disregard what district judges have to say? Do we need
Yes.
to have Congress completely defund district judges? Where are we going with this?
Yes, Speaker Johnson mentioned that about a week ago, that he could just defund these courts, which I think he absolutely should. But it looks like this week, the House and the Senate, two competing bills that are very similar in the Senate and in the House. You've got Darrell Issa's bill, the No Rogue Rulings Act, and you have something very similar in the Senate. And they're going to vote, hopefully this week, on limiting the jurisdiction and the power of these district court judges. So, in other words, there won't be an ability to issue a blanket across the entire country type of injunction anymore. But ultimately, I'll say this publicly, I've said it numerous times, President Trump should instruct his attorney general to ignore every single district court order and continue to do what he's doing, make an
Mm-hmm.
immediate appeal ex parte to the Supreme Court so we can finally get this thing figured out. But more importantly, he's already had numerous victories at the next level at the appeals court. The USAID thing was argued in his favor. They can
Mm-hmm.
close down USAID. They can fire all those people. They can allow the 8-month severance packages as well as all those federal workers to be fired. That was the merit-based system. The Court of Appeals ruled in favor of him there. When he goes to the higher courts, he's going to win. But if we ultimately want to stop this, there is a way that we can do it. And yes, it is controversial. And I don't believe that the president would do this, have the testicular fortitude to do it, or direct his attorney general to do it. But he
Mm-hmm.
could use the Aliens Enemies Act and actually declare war. And if he declares war, none of these judges, district, appeals, or even the Supreme Court, can do anything. They can't render anything because he has the inherent authority vested in him in the Constitution to repel any type of invasion from a foreign dignitary and or foreign adversary or country. That's what the law says. Now, we all know that in order to declare war, Congress, the president has to request it, Congress has to debate it, Congress then has to vote on it, and they say, okay, fine, you can declare war, and then that's how you declare war with the country. But when there's an invasion, there is inherent authority vested in the president of the United States to bypass Congress, pass a declaration of war to protect the American people, and then the judges cannot do anything. They can't get involved with anything. It is a tool that he could use, and quite frankly, I hope he does.
I seem to recall that was it FDR who during World War II sent a message to the Supreme Court. During a time of war, the Supreme Court does not rule the country, the president does. So you can rule any way you want to, but I'm running the country. And I think we need to see that now.
Yes.
Things are still nuts. I mean, district judges controlling the country, and Democrats are even softer on crime than they were before. I mean, this Luigi Mangione guy is a folk hero among the left. I mean, who was it? Was it Katie? What's the CNN reporter? Katie Caitlin or
Caitlin Collins? You
Caitlin
mean
Collins?
you
Thank
mean
you.
Dylan Mulroney's sister?
Well, I'm not going to go there, but the
Okay.
bottom line is that she put up a link to people who wanted to donate money to him, as you well know. She took it down after she was caught,
Yeah.
but what does that say when a major leftist broadcaster is trying to help raise money from someone who executed a insurance CEO? What does that say? I mean, they
It
don't want
shows
anybody being
that,
deported. They don't want this to
yeah.
happen. They're okay with people keying Teslas. I mean, they're very violent people, and we just sit back and take it.
That's exactly it. They're very violent. The entire party is violent, and they have a desensitization towards human life. Clearly, they, support the bad guys, and they attack the good guys, right? They want the Venezuelan gang members to have rights, but they don't care about the families and the victims of the people that those gang members killed.
No,
They
they
don't care
don't.
about their rights to live and prosper and to be safe.
Hmm.
It goes to show you what they did during the State of the Union address. They won't even stand for a cancer patient, let alone the victims of the criminals that they don't want to be deported. And then, of course, because they love the environment so much, wink, wink, they're blowing up electric car companies and
Hmm.
Tesla vehicles, which, by the way, those batteries, once they explode and cause fire, you want to talk about polluting the air. My goodness, I
Hmm.
don't think there's anything worse than that. So it's just so disingenuous for them to say that they care about the environment, that they're warm people that care about human beings and all that. No, you don't. You're a terrorist organization through and through. You should be designated as such. I've said that as far back as 2018, which is why I'm one of the most censored people in this country, because
Hmm.
I've called out the truth many, many years ago. And I'm sorry, but I consider you a terrorist and a terrorist organization if you allow people into the country to kill and murder innocent victims in America, if you destroy and kill and murder innocent babies in the womb and on the day that they're born. I mean, if you want to take away the people's rights to defend themselves by eliminating guns in society so that they can be killed and murdered in their own homes, I'm sorry, but you're a terrorist. You're a terrorist. And quite frankly, that's what the party has devolved into, and I'll say it publicly.
I wish Democrats could take some of that compassion that they have for trees and plants and criminals and aim that toward little kids being trafficked over the border. 30% of females coming over the border, and that goes all the way down to children, get raped on the way. There are the people that die from fentanyl. There are people that die at the hands of the people who come here illegally. And I always want to ask, where's all that liberal compassion going? I mean, if they're so compassionate about everything that the idea of a tranny having to use a boy's restroom just absolutely causes their bleeding heart to explode, then what about the little kids that die of fentanyl? What about the little kids that are raped and murdered by some of these illegal immigrants? What about those people? Why
Well,
do they pick and choose so much?
yeah, I think agenda drives common sense, and I think, quite frankly, they don't see those people as victims. They see them as collateral damage to a end of getting what they want, and they figured, well, hey, if we bring all these people in and we get them registered as new Democrat voters, and we can create a one-party system, so they kill a couple of 100,000 Americans, no
Hmm.
big deal. It's just collateral damage for us to remain in power and in control for the foreseeable future. I do believe that that is the attitude that runs deep through the hearts and minds of that party. And it's sick, it's demented, and it's sad. But no one else is willing to point that out except for me. And so that's the truth. Collateral damage. We are collateral damage. And they don't care about victims of crime because if they can get enough people into this country, then they can have a one party rule and Democrats, and grow the redistricting, and use them in the census and all that. I mean, their game is so easy to understand.
Hmm.
Anybody with half a brain that's paying attention can figure all this out. But now we're going to stop them. We're going to stop them, and we have stopped them, and it's going to continue. And one of the greatest things about Doge, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, it has nothing to do with finding and cutting fraud, waste, and abuse. I could care less about any of that. It's what's coming next that is going to be most significant. And that is the arrests, the prosecutions, the indictments of all these people that have committed all these crimes. And think about this, there's 438 agencies of the United States government. Doge has been in about 30 of them. So you've got plus 400 more to go. And the crimes that they found already, could you just imagine what they're going to find when they go through Congress, when they go through all those other 400 plus agencies? So as long as President Trump has the testicular fortitude to direct his attorney general and
Hmm.
she does exactly what she's supposed to do, all of these people are going to be prosecuted, hundreds of thousands of them. And that is truly the best part of Doge. It's not about cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. It's about prosecuting people that have committed massive amounts of crimes.
Do you really think that's going to happen, Josh? And I say that because Hillary Clinton deleted 33,000 emails under subpoena. Each one of those was a felony. Why didn't she go to jail? Hunter Biden's laptop, of course, I realize Kash Patel's there now, but the FBI protected him. We've seen so many Democrats commit so many crimes over the decades, and not a damn thing, excuse me, happens to any of them. Why is something going to happen to them this time?
Well, in the past, first and foremost, most of those were done not under Republican administrations, or we didn't have the full, House and the Senate and things like that. But you are right. I mean, you had people like Trey Gowdy that talked tough, but did absolutely nothing. You had many others doing investigations that really went nowhere. So I understand your skepticism and frustration. But remember, when the Doge people went into these different agencies, Elon Musk instructed them on day one to do one thing and one thing only: lock out all of the federal workers from that agency. No more
Hmm.
key codes, no more passcodes, no more usernames, no more email access, no more nothing. So, what does that mean? That means that those people now could not go in and erase issues or try to hide incriminating evidence and things like that. So, all of that stuff in these agencies, they have. And when that Doge report comes out, it's not just going to be, cut this, cut this, cut that. It's going to be, no, this person here committed this crime. Here's what they did. Here's how you should prosecute them. I believe it's going to be a blueprint to prosecution, because even Elon Musk said here, I think yesterday or the day before, that they found someone that took 400,000, social security numbers or something crazy, and that there's going to be an imminent arrest on that. So look, I don't know. They're talking a good game. We'll see what happens. I think a lot of the arrests that we're all waiting on bated breath to happen have not happened for one reason and one reason only: because they're constantly dealing with appealing all these crazy decisions from these district court judges that are getting in the way of deporting all these different, criminals and everything else. So they're so inundated with all of that right now that I don't want to give them a pass, but I'll give them a 45-day pass, because they've got to get through all of this stuff so that they can continue to do that. But one thing that I do know is Kash Patel knows where all the bodies are buried. And he lived through the entire 8+ years from the Trump administration, what they did then, to the 4 years when he wasn't in office, to now. And so I think that he's not going to have a short memory.
I don't think so either. Cash was on the show once, and he's a great guy, and he's also very no nonsense. And
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to get it done. If anybody can get it done, he will. And I really like a lot of the people that Trump has put in place. This is the first time ever where I can sit back and look at a new administration and say, know this person, interviewed this person, very
Yes, I
familiar with this
know. Me
person.
too. It's
Before
amazing,
that,
isn't
it was like,
it?
who are these people?
Yeah, I was joking about that. It's really the AJ Rice cabinet, if you think about it,
Hmm.
right? I mean, you probably know AJ. I've known AJ for 10+ years. AJ's a great
Yeah,
guy,
he's
great
been on the
patriot.
show a couple times. Yeah, on the
Yeah, he's
audio
been on
show.
mine as well. And, it's interesting. He's represented like every single person in the cabinet,
Mhm.
from Hegseth to I mean, Tulsi
Peter
Gabbard
Navarro.
to RFK Jr. to Peter
Mhm,
Navarro. I mean,
mhm.
the list is endless. I think I did a show on it, and I found like 12 to 14 cabinet members or something that he's represented. So I always joke that it's not the Trump cabinet, it's the AJ
Say
Rice
AJ
Pugliese
Rice.
cabinet.
I know him well enough to know he'll like that, and
Yeah,
he's a
I said
funny
it to
guy.
him on the air and
Did
off
you?
the air, so we're good friends.
Well, and of course, at one point he was Laura Ingram's radio show
Yes, that's correct.
producer.
That's where he
So
started.
AJ sends me a lot of guests, including Peter Navarro. I got to have fun
Hmm.
joking with him about his MAGA tattoo. But at any rate, yeah, AJ has sent a lot of great guests, and he knows a lot of people. And he's one of those guys that may not be a household name, but behind the scenes, he's important.
He's very important. He's the
Yeah.
biggest player in Washington D.C. in political conservative circles when it comes to booking guests and publicists and stuff like
Well,
that.
yeah. Well, I tell you what, speaking of big names in DC, I want to move on to one of your favorite big names, Jasmine Crockett.
I have a new
Now,
nickname for her.
I read your text to me. You said that recently you called her some kind of a skank, or what was it you called her?
I called her Jasmine Krakov.
Well,
You
that,
can
yeah.
you can fill in the rest. But look, I think she's dangerous. I think that she should be arrested and indicted for her crimes, which clearly she has. She's assaulted somebody. She's called for violence, which is a felony, which is incitement to violence, right? Take down Tesla. She's been part of that. A sitting member of Congress is organizing and strategizing with radical communists to take down an American car
Hmm.
company. I'm sorry, but that is not a slap on the wrist. That is not a censure vote. That is, you need to be removed from office. I mean, look what they did to George Santos, and he wasn't even convicted of anything, and they removed him from Congress. She's
Hmm.
done a hell of a lot worse, not to
Hmm.
mention disparaging somebody in a wheelchair. So I think
Right.
she's disgusting. I think she's a low-life skank, as I called her before. And I think, quite frankly, that the Department of Justice should open up a full investigation into her and charge her criminally.
And this isn't illegal, but if it were, she should be charged with being a fake ghetto person.
Yeah, that too.
Megan Kelly did a good thing the other day where she found some video of Jasmine Crockett when she was running for office the first time.
Mm-hmm.
No accent whatsoever. But
Sounds like a
now
librarian, right?
she did. She did. She's came from a wealthy family. She went to private schools all her life, kind of like Kamala.
Yep.
And now she gets out there and, they're like, what would you do if you could speak directly to President Trump? I tell him not to be Putin's hoe.
Yeah, I
Okay.
know.
I don't have a
It's
problem doing that
ridiculous.
accent because I'm basically doing a very good imitation of what she said. So she goes from sounding like you said, a librarian or a contestant on Jeopardy, and then she goes from, to Putin's hoe, and, she's doing some kind of rap crap where she's sticking her tongue
Mm-hmm.
out. I mean, the woman is unhinged.
She's
And
totally
I think
unhinged,
if I were an African
unfit, and
American,
unbecoming of a member of Congress.
and unbecoming as a member of her own race. Because if I were African American, I would look at what Jasmine Crockett is doing with the fake ghetto accent, and I would be very insulted by that. She's basically doing an impersonation of what a KKK member thinks all black people are like. It's disgusting. You know who else did that? Barack Obama when he was in Selma, putting on a fake black accent. Kamala Harris doing
Mm-hmm.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Now,
Or
something
even
else that
Hillary Clinton.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So something else your girlfriend did recently is she said
My girlfriend.
that black people that marry white people are slaves to their white Mazza. Well, why didn't she
Mm-hmm.
come up with that crap when Kamala Harris, who's married to Doug Emhoff, white,
Right.
was running for office? She didn't say it then, but now
Nope.
going after Donald's, uh, she's saying, "Oh yeah, you've got a white wife, so you're a slave to your white Mazza." I mean, come
Yeah.
on. This woman is saying and doing things that if any white member of Congress did it, they'd probably be kicked out of Congress. But we live in a society where we're so afraid and we have so much guilt that we have to assuage from the slavery days that we walk on eggshells around some minorities, and they can say and do anything they want. It can be things that any white person's career would be over with in a second if they did them. But she's a minority, so she's getting away with it. And I have no
Yeah.
problem saying that. That's
Yeah.
exactly why she's getting away with this. Everybody's walking on eggshells around her, but she's making a fool out of herself. And I think she's insulting black people. She's insulting African Americans with this poor imitation of a ghetto person, and she's kind of implying that that's what black people are like. So I'm sick of it personally, and I wish there were black people brave enough to be outspoken and say that's not who we are. We're not
Mm-hmm.
ghetto. We don't all speak in a way that makes it sound like we didn't graduate third grade. But that's what Jasmine Crockett is doing. And I don't know if you got
Yeah.
a chance to see that, but Megan Kelly did a great job of
Yeah. And
impersonating.
if you think about it, I mean, go back in history, George Allen said the word macaca, and that was the end of his career. But yet she can say all these horrific things against white people and everything else. And not only does she not even get in trouble, the media praises her. They call her authentic and all that, which of course she's not.
Authentic
But you
my
know what
ass.
she is? Not only is she racist, but she is proof that affirmative action was one of the worst things we could have ever have done for any minority, because all it did was categorize them as less than what they actually are. And that's
Hmm.
sad,
It
because
is.
when you have a situation where these people are getting jobs or getting promoted and things like that because of the color of their skin and not because of the content of their character, again, it goes back to the meritocracy that we're now seeing unfold in the Trump administration. And what it does is it shows the true racists too, because there's no way you could be that smart. You have to sound like you're from the hood so that you can get street cred. But, even though whether
Hmm.
you do or you don't, it doesn't matter, because that's how you are. So you can't rise above the street cred or the hood rat type of mentality. And instead, I'll just talk to you the way that I think you should be talked to, which again is racist. You're right. It's
Hmm.
absolutely racist. And I believe the majority of Black Americans do not attest to that nor think that way.
I think a lot of them are insulted by what she's doing, but then again, there's also pressure on them not to come out and say anything. So, they're going to be called a house Negro or some other. And by the way, the
Uncle
left throws
Tom
that
or
around
whatever.
a
Yeah.
lot. I had a black gentleman on my show, and he said every time he's been called an Uncle Tom or a house Negro, it was by a white liberal.
Yep.
And
No doubt.
I didn't doubt that for a minute. White liberals are racist. They want African Americans to show up on election day, and then the other days of the year they don't give a damn about them.
Absolutely
So
true. 100%.
yeah. So okay, enough about Jasmine Crockett. Let's talk about the Signal scandal. Where are you on that? What are your thoughts?
It's a joke. I mean, look, when you're getting your teeth kicked in for 65 plus days straight and your head is swiveling in every different direction because you've just been hit with this shock and awe campaign of fixing the country so quick, you have no power in the Senate, you have no power in the House, you have no power really in any of the state governments, very few. And the only thing you have are these radical extreme leftist judges that are breaking the Constitution. Well, there's not much there. And so you're going to grasp onto anything that you think might actually help, your cause, or to discourage or damage President Trump and his administration. Look, there was no classified information. The entire thing worked perfectly to perfection. There was no loss of life for Americans. It was a successful mission. And there was no war plans in the actual text messages. So again, it's a story about nothing, which is why I called it no signal, all noise.
Well, I think when you look at other things that have happened, let's take Afghanistan, 13 people died, tens
Yep.
of billions of dollars worth of equipment left behind. If that didn't cause people to get fired, then this certainly shouldn't. And I know when you say
Mm-hmm.
that, and I think, I was watching Scott Jennings battle, this all it's whataboutism, Biden, 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 Biden. And as I so often tell liberals when I'm debating them, me pointing out your hypocrisy is not whataboutism. You look at
Exactly.
all the stuff that they've gotten away with, and then something 1/10 or 100th of that importance happens, and they're all over it. I mean, if they're so concerned about national security, where were they when President Clinton kept losing the nuclear codes? Where were they when
Yes.
President Carter, when he
I'll
went
tell
back to
you too a
planes,
true
wouldn't?
story about the nuclear codes. I was interviewing Buzz Patterson many, many years ago.
Yeah,
Buzz
wrote the book.
Patterson, good guy, was the one who held the nuclear football for Bill and Hillary Clinton, but obviously for Bill Clinton.
Right.
And he was telling me that when that happened and he lost the quote nuclear codes, first off, he had them wrapped around a bunch of credit cards on a sticky note. Okay, this is what he told me. And the nuclear codes were on the sticky note with a
Hmm.
bunch of credit cards wrapped around in a rubber band. That's how much he cared about our national security. But
Right.
when he lost it, he didn't care about anything other than, oh my God, what's the media gonna say? He didn't care that our nuclear codes couldn't be found. That wasn't
Mhm.
even a thought in his head. But
Right.
what he was concerned with was, what's the media gonna say about it? That goes to show you the mentality of the left, right there.
Of course. Of course. That's Bill Clinton all over, and you got to what would have been funny was watching him try to retrace his steps. Well, maybe I left him with Monica in the Oval Office. I mean, who
Yeah,
knows
maybe
what the
they're on the
hell
blue dress somewhere.
exactly.
But he also
That
told me
yeah,
that when they were in the elevator, because he was in the elevator with Bill and Hillary, they would just yell and scream and
and
curse at
curse.
each other. And then as soon as the doors opened, knowing the press was going to be there, they were all smiles.
Mm,
Everything's fine. We're a loving couple and all that. Meanwhile, she's, as Bill Clinton said, his own words, his wife has, well, let's just say, indulged in a certain snack more than he has, if you know what I mean, with the same sex. He said that publicly
I
on
don't know what it
numerous
says about me,
occasions.
but I knew what you were saying.
Yeah, you know exactly. Yeah, more
I know
kitty
exactly
cat,
what you.
shall we say, than him, and that's saying a lot. And
Oh yeah.
so these are the most disingenuous type of people, and it's just they need to be exposed, and that's why I built my career on exposing all of these people, and quite frankly, to my own detriment. I've had threats and death threats and
Hmm.
all kinds of crazy things happening. It's one of the reasons why I wrote Preserving Liberty, to break through the censorship that I face. And all of what's in that book is exposing all the FBI, the CIA, the deep
Hmm.
state, Fauci, the immigration people, the NGO.
Hmm.
I mean, you name it. It's all in Preserving Liberty, available now on Amazon. Yeah, it's not
And
fun.
not only that, they don't just do it to people like you and me,
Right.
Josh. The little 6-year-old girl that was imitating AOC got several death threats because
Yeah.
she was doing a really good impersonation of AOC.
Yeah.
And my thought on that was, if you can't handle a 6-year-old kid doing an impersonation, you're the most intolerant person imaginable. And it's funny because they're all supposed to be so inclusive and about
Exactly. And that's
diversity
the
and they're,
ruse, that's the farce
yeah.
of their party. And what's happening right now and why they're reacting the way they're reacting is because for 4 years they've had no personal responsibility. They've had no repercussions from anything that they've done. And quite frankly, the inmates were running the asylum.
Oh,
And
yeah.
now all of a sudden, they're faced with something they've never faced before in their entire lives: responsibility. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden there's law and order. And now we're funding the police and not defunding the police. And now there is rule of law. We're deporting the bad guys and the criminals. And all these different things that are happening, they can't handle the fact that now they have personal responsibility and they're going to be judged by their actions. And that's truly why they're lashing out, because as my good buddy Evan Sayet said in his book, The Kindergarten of Eden, they have evolved to about a third grade or fourth grade level in maturity and mentality. And he's
Oh,
right.
yeah. And I had a guy on my show named James Dellingpole. He's a writer
Yeah,
in the
I've heard
UK.
of
Yeah,
him.
and he had written the book 365 Ways to Tick Off a Liberal. And one of the things he said when he was on the show was, frankly, liberals are an example of the cessation of mental development. He said they're all
Yep,
stuck around age 13, 14, 15, where you think you know everything and you think the world owes you something. And
exactly.
he's 100% right about that. That's the
He
way
is
they
right.
are. And you mentioned Buzz's book, and I read Buzz's book, and I would encourage people to read that one as well after they buy and read yours, of course. And he's talking about the way they would curse in elevators and all that stuff, and then
Mm-hmm.
they'd be all smiles in front of people when the elevator got to his floor. That's just childishness. I mean, it really is, and that's what Democrats do. I was arguing with a liberal female Democrat about my age once, and she literally just said "F you" and walked out of the room.
They can't
And
take criticism. And here's the thing, I say this all the time. I say, the truth has no agenda, and neither do I. The
right,
truth is what it's going to be, and that's it. And you can't argue with me and win an argument, because I'm always going to have the facts and the truth on my side. So you can ignore those truths, you can pretend that I'm wrong, but I'm not wrong. And I think that goes with not just me, but it goes with most conservatives that speak the truth, that know the truth, and that have the facts on their side. You can't defeat that in an argument. You could
no,
maybe
you
try to
can't.
articulate it a little bit better than someone else or something like that, But facts are facts, and you're not entitled to your own.
Well, what led to her giving me the FU and leaving was she said that she absolutely didn't believe that billionaires had any place getting involved in politics. And this was way back before Trump and Musk. And I said, so what about Warren Buffett? What about George Soros? And it was like, F you, and it's like,
Yeah.
and that's actually the way they've been conditioned to debate. They think that if they're debating, no matter how far they're pressed against, a corner, that they can just say F you or perhaps demonstrate it with a hand and walk out, and that by saying F you first, they somehow win the argument. And as
Right.
far
It
as
just makes
facts
them
go,
look
they don't.
even more stupid and childish.
Mhm.
But look, I think the bottom line is that they cannot handle criticism. Number
Mm-mm.
one, they have this disingenuousness that they quote say that they believe in freedom of speech and the First Amendment, but it's only speech that they believe in. If you believe in something else, you can't say it. They'll shut you down. They'll threaten you. They'll censor you. They'll ban you. Right? Because you can't speak the truth if it doesn't line up with what they believe. And so they don't
Absolutely.
believe in the First Amendment. They believe in propaganda,
They'll say something about, well, families and children are getting separated under the Trump administration, and you say,
which
well, what about
started
the
under Obama.
300,000? How many thousands of kids were separated under Biden? It was like 300,000 that they've
Mm-hmm.
lost. I imagine most
Exactly.
of them ended up in sex trafficking or something like that, but they don't want to hear about that. Same thing about the cages. They said that Trump was putting little kids in cages, but the pictures they used were from the Biden administration.
Mm-hmm.
So they really, and then all of a sudden it's okay. I mean, then it's okay.
Right.
Sarah Palin's kid was standing on this, as a toddler, was standing on this big, big dog, and the media and PETA and everybody went crazy on it until someone pulled out a picture of Ellen DeGeneres's kid doing the exact same thing. Then it just all went
Yeah.
away because if Ellen DeGeneres did it, it
Yeah.
must be all right.
Or the quote unquote Elon Hitler salute thing where he's giving his
God,
heart, right?
yeah,
Meanwhile, you can take pictures of so many Democrats doing the exact same thing. It's just so disingenuous and really I mean it's just artificial. They're just fake. And that's the thing. The people in America realize who was authentic and real, Trump, of course, and who was, inauthentic and fake and artificial, and it was
and
clearly
what's
the Democrats. Thank God they were able to see the difference.
what's interesting is that Democrats don't let something go just because it's been debunked. The other day, they were still telling he said he was giving his heart out to them. They're still saying that's a Nazi salute. I believe Democrat Representative Gomez actually recently said something about the losers and suckers line again.
It's
They won't let go.
unbelievable.
Bolton, former UN Representative Bolton, who doesn't like Donald Trump.
Mustachio.
Well, I'm sorry.
Mustachio, I
Oh,
call him.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Glorious mustache. But the bottom line is he was there and he hates Trump. And he said that didn't happen. Okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, Jeffrey Goldstein, speaking of Jeffrey Goldstein, he knows that. And yet he still pumps that lie. So I
Yeah.
just get
Well,
tired
what
of all
did
this
what did Joseph Goebbels say? If you tell a lie long
lie
enough,
off.
eventually people will believe it. He was the propaganda minister for Adolf Hitler. But let's talk about this whole Hitler talk and all this and that.
But yeah, let's
Okay.
go to that. Sure.
Let's go to that real quick. They spent the entire election season calling President Trump Hitler, and nobody in the media called them out for their hypocrisy. First and foremost, the Joy Campaign. Where did the Joy Campaign come from? It came from Nazi Germany between 1933 and 1945 when they were killing Jews, gypsies, and everybody else. The morale was a little bit low, and so they needed to boost up the morale so the killing could continue. So what did they do? They did sporting events, they did cooking events, they did arts and crafts, they did dancing, they did all kinds of different competitions to kind of artificially bring up the joy, if you will. And then in 2024, you have a Democrat candidate who did a coup to get into that position, breaks down and says, we're having a joy campaign. We're going to do a joy campaign, even though there was no joy and the economy was in the tank and Americans were being killed because the borders are wide open. But their communist Nazi propaganda talking about the Joy campaign. Then they have the audacity to go around and call President Trump Hitler or a Nazi. Not to mention the Madison Square Garden rally, which, by the way, 3 Democrats, Carter, Clinton, and I believe FDR, held their conventions in that
Madison Square
auditorium
Garden.
in Madison Square Garden. But at that time, were they ever called Nazis or
No.
KKK? Of course not. And then the worst one is probably the whole unburdened by what has been thing. That is not word salad. That comes from the Chinese communist traditions of the three olds: old customs, old values, and old morals. And so, what she's saying when she says don't be unburdened, she's saying forget about your past freedoms and liberty and prosperity. Don't be burdened by that. Be unburdened by what can be in communism. You see, those are the types of things that I break down and explain in Preserving Liberty. And those are the things that if we had that debate with President Trump and I call her Heels Up Headboard Harris on my show, and Kamala Harris, then President Trump would have been, if he would have said those things in the debate, it would have been over because everybody would be going onto Google and been searching the Joy campaign or the three olds of Chinese customs. And guess what? They would all see that it's 100% accurate. And it's 100% true. And then they would be like, wow, we really are going to make a mistake here. We need to stop. And her entire campaign would have just cratered instantly. But, people don't do those things. They don't take those steps. They don't do that type of research. And, I'm sitting there watching the debate and he's getting softball after softball, for him to just it out of the park. And he doesn't hit her with, what he needs to do. He hits her with other things and this and that, but he's not as in depth, sadly, and as articulate, sadly, as even someone like a JD Vance,
Mm-hmm.
He obviously did a great job with, Meatball or Knucklehead or whatever he called himself. I think it was Knucklehead.
Tampon Tim. Well, that is very true, and I think JD is really being set up perfectly for 2028. So I
Yeah,
I
and
could
I'd like
go
to
ahead.
talk about that because a lot of these
Sure.
people are talking about how President Trump should win a third term and serve a third term. Look, I'll say it publicly right here, right now. All politicians should not be lifetime politicians. Politicians are like dirty diapers. They need to be changed and changed often, even the good ones. And I would not want to see President Trump serve a third term. I think JD Vance is more than articulate, and all he really has to do, as I said on Jeff Carreir's show yesterday, is take this beautiful cherry red convertible Ferrari in mint condition and drive it. You don't have to crash it up. You don't have to take it around hairpins and go out of control. And that's going to be the economy, and that's going to be the Trump administration 4 years from now. He can run on everything that President Trump did and just say, hey, I'm going to continue. I was part of it. I was part of the administration. And yes, I'm going to continue President Trump's policies. Why not do that and not mess around with, changing the 22nd Amendment and all this other stuff? Because remember, it's not about now. It's about in the future. If, God forbid, another communist, radical, extremist leader takes over, now we can't get rid of him in 2 terms. Now we got to do it in 3 terms. Think about the damage that they could do permanently to this country. So I am 100% against him running for a 3rd term.
What's your take on 2026?
On the midterms, I think there's 2 things he has to do, and if he does it, it's not even going to be close. First thing, you need to pass the SAVE Act, which I think they're working on this week, and you need to you need to make it mandatory for voter ID in all 50 states, and you need to ban all non-citizens from every single level of government elections, ban them from being part of any of our elections. The other thing is I would redo the census, and I would remove illegal aliens from the count, which will then lower the Democrats' redistricting amount of seats and things like that, which would make it a lot more fair. And the last thing, $5,000 Doge cuts, baby. You get those out before the midterms.
Right.
How are you going to vote against that? How? Impossible. You know what I mean?
Your girlfriend Jasmine Crockett said $5,000 wasn't any money. It's chump
No, she
change.
wants reparations for people that were never enslaved. Right.
Well, she wants that, but yeah, doesn't want the $5,000. I mean, you've got to imagine that somewhere in America there are middle class
Of
blacks
course she
saying, "Are
wants
you
it. They all
crazy?"
want it. They don't want him to do it because they know it
Right.
hurts them.
Interesting. Well, I keep getting back to Jasmine Crockett, and I apologize for that. But she was saying the $5,000 was chump change and didn't amount to anything. And
Well, that's because she's a corrupt member of Congress who became a multimillionaire in just 2 short years. So, yeah, it's probably
yeah,
chump change for a corrupt person like her.
well, AOC was given something like $20 million for her life story. I haven't seen anything come out on AOC's life story.
You
It's
know
kind
the
of like when
truth about AOC and Ilhan Omar or Ilhan Noor Saeed Elmi and Ayanna Presley and I
Mhm.
guess the other one I can't think of the name. There's another member,
Rashida Tlaib,
Rashida Tlaib. Do you know where they came from? They
not
are the
Tupelo.
equivalent of the political Spice Girls. A group called Justice Democrats got together and took a recruitment of 10,000 people of all different walks of life, a Hispanic woman, an Islamic woman, and then, of course, Talib, and then a black woman. And they literally had a casting call. This is absolutely
Mhm.
100% true. Look it
Yeah,
up. Justice Democrats. They got together and they had 10,000 people apply. And they chose AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, and Ayanna Presley. Those four for the quote squad. That's how they got into Congress. And they
yeah,
found
she
these
interviewed for the
people and they
job.
put money behind them and they ran them.
So basically, it was a turnkey deal for the people they selected
Absolutely correct.
because
They
I
are
think we
the
both
political
know
Spice
AOC
Girls.
could not have coordinated a campaign that would have gotten her into Congress. But no,
She didn't even know
yeah,
what a
that's
garbage disposal was.
the squad basically auditioned for their jobs. It was kind of like
That's
the
correct.
selection of the monkeys,
It's one
you
hundred
know, the
percent
pre
accurate.
the prefab four. And, I mean, look at, I'm not knocking baristas, but come on, is it someone who's a barista really prepared to be a congresswoman? I mean, I just don't think so. And that doesn't seem to bother you. Even Nancy Pelosi, and you're not going to catch me on camera saying nice things about Nancy Pelosi very often, but even she said that AOC won in a district where a half empty glass of water with a D behind its name could win.
Yep.
So,
A
you've
ham
got Nancy
sandwich could have won in that district. That's correct.
easily,
Right.
easily. Let's see
But people
here.
don't know that. They think that she just decided to just run for Congress. No, she was recruited
Hmm.
like the political Spice Girls. Okay, that's what the squad is. I want people to know this, that the squad is nothing more than a casting call. It's a fabrication of your imagination, and they are the equivalent of the political Spice Girls. Why do I say that? Because the Spice Girls were basically all, people that auditioned for that role to become part of that group. I'm also aging myself and dating myself too. But regardless of
By
that,
saying
that's
Spice
where they
Girls?
came from. Yeah, the Spice Girls.
Ok
That's where
okay.
they came from. It's called
Man, that's
Justice
way after my time,
Democrats.
so
Yeah,
I'm really being aged here.
yeah.
Alright, so maybe we can come up with a fun graphic. Have you seen that meme where Nancy Pelosi is like a young mom and she's got like 3 of the squad members and she's trying to they're all crying and acting up and she's trying to hold them all at the same time. Have you seen that?
No, but I'd love to see that one
I'm
because
going
I
to
would
find
post
that.
that one right
I'm going
away.
to find that and send it to you because it is
Okay, good,
so
good.
accurate. But yeah, the Spice Girls is that's a fitting comparison
Mm-hmm.
for the squad. And then they messed it up because they started putting more members in the squad, and I didn't even know who all the squad members were at one point. I
Cori
just remember the
Bush and
original.
Jamal Bowman, and yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Ko Rana or Ro Khanna or whatever
yeah, that
the
was too
names.
many. Four. There should only be four in the squad, and
Yeah,
those are the
the
ones.
original members.
That's right. The original squad. That's look, I don't have time to make fun of everybody. So you can only put so
Yeah,
many
they should
people in
call
the
them the Bomb
squad.
Squad because that's all they're doing is firebombing our rights and Congress and everything else. So that'd be a more fitting name for them.
She's just childish. I don't know if you remember she had some kind of a town hall and the crowd was getting out of hand and she was sitting on the stage, literally sitting with her feet dangling off and she started dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Started dancing.
Yeah. None
to
of
them.
them can handle criticism. And beyond their talking points, they're illiterate. There's nothing else. I mean, once they forget their talking points, or let's say they're having an argument or they're on television or wherever they may be, and they put out their talking points with their little earpiece, right? Hey, say this, say that. And then they
Hmm.
say that. And then afterwards, the person in their ear is gone, I ain't got nothing for you. You're on your own. And then they sit there and stammer because they
Hmm.
don't have the knowledge, they don't have the intellect, they don't have the articulation, and quite frankly, they don't have the truth on their side. So it's very easy to defeat them in any debate. And I challenge
Well,
anyone on the left to be able to
let's
beat
just
me.
say
It'll
this.
never happen.
AOC is a liar. Let me give you several examples. She went down to Mexico. They have toilets in the prison that have a water fountain on the back. So she comes out and says that the Mexican women, that are being detained at the border are being forced to drink toilet water. Well, okay, there's a water fountain that plugs into the back of the toilet, but they are drinking clean water. It's not toilet water. Then there was that wonderful scene where she was putting her hands behind her back and trying to pretend that she was
Right.
handcuffed. She was not handcuffed. She was lying. Then
Correct.
J6, she starts talking about the horror of it, and we find out she was in a room in a building across the street. So the woman is a liar. She thinks nothing about lying. She's just like Chuck Schumer. She's just like Bill Clinton. If
Yeah.
a lie helps them, they tell it.
Yeah. And let's talk about January 6th real quick.
Okay.
How many people were charged with U.S. Code 182383,
Is
which
that
is
is
insurrection?
that I'm sorry?
Which is insurrection?
Insurrection, right? Yeah, I thought it was zero.
None. Zero. Why? Because even the jackboot, you know, prosecutors knew that what they did that day would never merit that type of a charge. That's number one. Number two, how can it be an insurrection when the doors to the Capitol opened from the inside out? Meaning they were let in. It was 100% a Fed surrection. Oh my God, they're going to challenge the results of the election in the House of Representatives, where Republicans have more state legislatures, and President Trump is going to come out winning by 3 or 4 votes. We can't allow that to happen. We need a backup plan. Let's infiltrate the crowd of Antifa people,
Mm-hmm.
BLM people, but
Mm-hmm.
also FBI agents, Capitol Police, you name it. They were all on the ground. There was over 30 agents in the
Mm-hmm.
crowd at that time, and they basically entrapped them. And as I've said before, and I'll say again, November 3rd was the insurrection. January 6th was the
Yeah, that's
cover up.
that's that's exactly right. Now, when we talk about these federal judges, there were some that kept out all types of exculpatory evidence.
Correct.
That some of them exceeded the recommendation on what the penalties should be. I had a gentleman on my show who was a prisoner for a couple of years, and he was talking to me about the conditions. He said there are times they would bring them sandwiches with no meat. Sometimes they would bring them sandwiches, and the meat in the middle would just be disgusting. I mean, it was so far past its use by date, and they were just totally mistreated. He said one night they all decided to sing patriotic songs, and the guards came down and told them to cut that crap out. They couldn't even sing patriotic American songs. There was one guy that needed to go to the hospital, and they delayed him by like 6 months.
Yeah, Ryan
I
Sampson.
can tell you that in the case of the prisoner that I interviewed, he said they didn't even let him have a haircut for a year and a half. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's just
interviewed Jake Lang as soon as he came out, and we had a long discussion about a lot of that stuff. And one of the things that we talked about is restitution. Reimbursement, making these people's lives whole once again
hmm
for what they
absolutely.
had to endure and what they had to go through, and they deserve millions upon millions of dollars for what they had to go through. I mean, this was a prosecution of completely political elements, and they did things so illegal. I mean, not just the overcharging, as you pointed out, but there's even cases in which FBI informants were part of the defense for these poor people. I mean, they infiltrated their own defense attorneys, for goodness sakes. So
Mm.
again, these people need millions upon millions of dollars in restitution, and I know Jake is fighting hard to make sure that that happens. There's class action lawsuits for the J6ers against these prosecutors and things like that. And look, stripping them from their security clearances and all that is just not enough. I want to see these people rot in a jail cell, perhaps maybe in the
Absolutely.
same jail cells with the same conditions that the J6ers were in.
Starting with the deputy warden of the J6 Gulag, if you're
Yeah,
familiar with that woman. You know, it's interesting. The police officer who shot Bobbitt was promoted. The
yeah,
deputy warden who was essentially putting these prisoners in third world conditions was promoted. The people that acted out the most were
yeah.
rewarded for that behavior. And I'd like to see that reversed. I'd like to see reparation for the prisoners. And one other thing, have you seen the video of Ray Epps being escorted off of the grounds?
I
What the
have.
hell was that?
Yeah,
I
I
mean, all
have.
of a sudden, was it six or more people that came up around him and then escorted him out? He said in a text message to his son he had orchestrated the whole thing and he didn't even get jail time?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, there was some folks that went out to Queen Creek, Arizona, where he was living at the time, and confronted him on his golf cart, and he wouldn't talk to them. And within 3 days, the house was empty, and he was in his RV in Colorado. And he took him and his wife and his dog, and they're out on the road. So they basically abandoned their home in Arizona. This is again a couple of years ago. So I don't know, maybe by now they might have sold it or who knows. But at the
Mm-hmm.
time, that's what happened because they were being confronted with all of that information that you just pointed out. And of course, he ran, with his tail between his legs, like the coward that he is. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe he'll be prosecuted. Maybe some of these others, the J6 committee, the Reichstag committee, as I called it at the time, all these people. Because look, let's not forget this auto pen thing is a big
I was
deal.
about to go there.
You know,
Yeah.
Alan Dershowitz endorsed my book for its authenticity and constitutionality. And I was texting with him a couple of days ago, and I asked him point blank, is this auto pen situation reversible? And he said to me, yes, it is if you get it in front of the Supreme Court. Because when you use a pardon or commutation or legislation or an executive order or something like that, you have to be present. You have to sign it. There's a reason President Trump signs these and then holds them up to
Mm-hmm.
everybody
Mm-hmm.
because it's part of the law. He's not doing it to brag and boast. Well, maybe he is a little bit, but in reality, he's doing it to show them that I just signed this. This is not auto pen. I just signed this. So according to Dershowitz, who I would take at his word, he's the greatest defense attorney alive. He said that the Supreme Court would overturn those auto pen pardons if they got the case. But that's the other question. Are they going to take the case? Are they going to say, nah, go to the lower courts, let them get a stab at it and delay this process? Or would they take an emergency ex parte directly to the court? I don't know. I can't answer that. But the
Mm-hmm.
bottom line is if they do take the case, those pardons are going to be reversed.
Well, that's going to open up an interesting can of worms. We're going to have
That's
everybody on the
correct.
J6 committee liable. We're going to have Hunter Biden, another example. Well,
Mm-hmm.
was the auto pen used on Hunter Biden? I don't know that.
I don't know the answer. Look, the what was it? The oversight committee. What was it? I can't think of the name of the group that was doing all the auto pen and forensics, and they had handwriting analysis, and they had all these different people. The oversight project is what it's called. They have all the information. They have all the documentation. They could literally package that whole thing up with a nice, neat little bow on it and a little note to Pam and say, "Here you go." And prosecute. So whether that's going to happen, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, look, we're only 2 months in, a little more than 2 months in, and we haven't seen the arrests that we want to see. They're going after the Tesla people. They're going after some of these other people. But I agree, we're not seeing, all these people that have done all these horrific things brought to justice yet. Then again, Bongino just joined maybe 30 days ago. And
Mm-hmm.
so you've got Harmeet Dillon still not involved yet at the civil rights attorney part of the Department of Justice. So there's still a lot of moving and workable parts, is what I'm trying to say. I'm impatient. I want to see these people prosecuted immediately as well. But, we got to realize it's not even 90 days in. If we're at this point in 6 months, yeah, I'm going to have a problem, and I'm going to be one of the loudest voices out there screaming at these people to prosecute. but I'll give him a little bit more time.
Fair enough. Let's talk about something more fun. Kid Rock bringing Bill Maher to the White House. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I was asked about this yesterday on another show, and all I can say is I think that Bill Maher and President Trump are going to have an actually good conversation. I think that there's a lot more in common than people think.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly, there's the non wokeness that both of them share. Getting rid of the DEI, they both share. They both also understand the threat of Islamic extremism quite well. So I think there's going to be, and of course, things for Israel and anti-Iran having nuclear weapons and things like that. So if they stick on some of those things, I think they're going to have a pretty interesting conversation. But again, this is also Bill Maher, who's called him an orange gorilla. President Trump sued him for that. He's called him, he's got Trump derangement syndrome. He hates Trump. So it's going to be interesting. But I think President Trump is a bigger person. And I honestly think that Bill Maher is also going to not be as adversarial either. I think they're going to have a good conversation.
I hope that that happens. It's nice to kind of see this type of coming together. By the way, Bill Maher said something about Alan West looking like a gorilla. So that's kind of standard insulting from
Yeah,
Bill
I've interviewed
Maher.
Alan West. He's a great guy.
Yeah, and he didn't deserve that. And once again,
No.
that was a very racist statement, but Bill Maher's a white liberal male, and white liberal males can make racist statements with impunity. So, what do you think about the New York Times coming out and saying we were misled by the scientific community?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is a CYA, if you want to know the
Hmm.
truth.
Yeah.
I think that they know that their documentation, their information, their emails, their correspondence are in the hands of Doge. And they're from USA, they're from all the others, and they know that their goose is cooked. And so they're trying to get out in front of it. They're trying to say, well, we were duped. We're not going to take responsibility. We're going to blame it on the scientific community, which, by the way, in Preserving Liberty, I proved with their own emails from Freedom of Information Act requests that not only did it come from the lab, they knew it came from the lab, and they admitted it came from the lab, and all of that is in Preserving Liberty. So I think that's what's going on. I think it's a CYA. They're trying to distance themselves because I think they know what's going to come soon.
Yeah. And I've talked to medical researchers, had them on the show, and every one of them said you can just look at the COVID-19 virus and tell that it was put together piece by piece, kind of like Obama's birth certificate. But at any rate, now the other thing is President Trump has promised to release the JFK files, the RFK files, the MLK files, all the Epstein information. Is anything going to come out of all that?
Well, look, I said this before when the JFK files were dropped. I called it a giant nothing burger with extra cheese and a little dash of misinformation Russian dressing. That's what I called it because so many things were missing from that. The only thing you can glean basically from those files is that the CIA was involved in killing him. But I've said this before and I'll say it again. The American people as a whole
Mm-hmm.
have been lied to for 62 plus years. They
Mm-hmm.
can't handle the fact that the vice president at the time ordered the assassination of the president at the time with the help of the CIA. They can't handle the fact that LBJ killed JFK with the help of the CIA. That's what's missing from these documents. And the reason I say that is because if you have heard the unredacted and authenticated phone call of the great grandson of Clifton Carter. Clifton Carter was a very close advisor to LBJ, and he was also the head of the DNC, the executive director of the DNC at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He was on tape talking about hiring Malcolm Mac Wallace, a hitman, to kill JFK. Now, we also know that JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald had no powder burns on him. The gun did not match up with the gun that he had, and there was no residue on anything. And how can you run down 4 flights of steps without being out of breath? And there was multiple witnesses that showed that he walked calmly, he was not out of breath. and all that. And now Anna Paulina Luna, the congresswoman from Florida, I believe, she
Yeah.
said that there's an actual tape that they're still holding on to that shows Oswald standing next to the motorcade. So that almost one right then and there proves that it was not him that did this. This was multiple shooters, and it was the CIA. It was Malcolm Mack Wallace as at least one of the shooters. And remember, Underhill freaked out afterwards. He was going to tell everybody what happened and where it happened. And then he ends up in a hotel room with a bullet in the back of his head. So, like I said before, they're still lying. They're still covering it up. For what reason? I don't know. The only thing I can think of is they know that the American electorate can't handle the truth, which is
Hmm.
LBJ killed JFK with the help of the CIA.
I was wondering, if it's the same excuse that they give us regarding extraterrestrials. The American people couldn't handle it. I don't know. I think at this point, most Americans could handle it, and they could certainly handle this thing about JFK. But they had, okay, I'm giving my age away here. I was a little over 6 months old whenever JFK was,
I wasn't even born yet.
I figured that, Josh. But,
75.
yeah. But
I
at
just
any
turned
rate,
50.
I'm about to be 62. So at any rate, but one of the things my mom used to talk about all the time is how I was just, in diapers when JFK was shot. Whenever all this stuff was scheduled to be released, I said to myself, well, they've had my entire lifetime almost to clean those files. So color me skeptical, but I think if you give the CIA 60 plus years to clean some files up and get rid of some files, they're going to do it. So
Yeah,
I
no doubt.
personally didn't expect anything. I don't know what Anna Paulina Luna is talking about. Maybe I'll get lucky and get her on the show and ask her what she's talking about. But anything that's going to show, Josh, that the CIA was involved in JFK's murder isn't going to be released. You know that. I mean, come on. Do you really think those records are so
Well, I
well
mean,
kept?
President Trump said it a couple of days ago when someone asked him point blank who killed JFK. And he said the CIA helped out. He said it. His words,
Hmm.
not mine. You can see the tape. He says it in the Oval Office. He says he had help.
Yeah, I
So,
think I saw that. So again, it's great that he said it, but
will we see it?
most people are going to have to hear and see more than that to agree with him on that. Well, listen, I want to give you a little time here at the end.
Sure.
Anything else you want to talk about that we haven't talked about? I added a few things from today's news,
Yeah, no,
but
you're fine. I would love people to go and pick up a copy of Preserving Liberty. It's an easy read. It's only 150 pages. You'll want to read it with a yellow highlighter in your hand. Congressman Paul Gosar from the Freedom Caucus did the foreword to it. I came up with 10 legislative ideas in the book that he could introduce as legislation. It's been endorsed by, again, Dershowitz. It's been endorsed by Roger Stone, who worked for 4 presidents.
mm-hmm.
It's been endorsed by Dr. Pierre Corey. It's been endorsed by Fred Galvin, Mark Lamb. I mean, Sonny Borelli, Wendy Rogers, you name it. There's a lot of firepower behind the book. And what it does ultimately is it doesn't complain about the issues. It explains the issues and it shows you real solutions. And you've said it. You said it's all meat and no fat. And I appreciate the fact that
Mm-hmm.
that you said that. So, folks, you can go to Amazon, you can pick up a copy, Preserving Liberty, Bold and Brave Solutions to Save America and Create Permanent Freedom. Permanent freedom is the key here. Everything that's going on in Washington right now can all be reversed because it's
Mm-hmm.
been all done by executive action. How do we make all these things permanent? How do we codify them into law? Well, Preserving Liberty is an entire book dedicated to all of it.
Talk to me about your show. Where can people find your podcast?
Well, right now I've been expanding finally and getting through the censorship barriers. So you can follow me on X at real JBU show at real JBU show. That's really all I'm gonna say for now. I've got some other things that I'm working on, and I'm gonna be having some major changes on how I deliver my show 7 days a week coming soon.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for being here. Don't hang up right away. We're going to have to wait for the show to finish uploading. The way
Sure.
this one works is you upload it into the cloud and then you bring it back down, but sometimes the
Okay.
uploading is running just a little bit further behind.
No
So
problem.
anyway, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording and say once again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. God bless.
As I said
Anytime, any
before,
topic.
you're an all-purpose political commentator. So I just went
I
down.
can cover it all.
I read about 3 hours, 4 hours of news feed every day. So this morning I just took some notes and we threw a couple of other things in. I didn't warn you, but I knew you'd be able to comment on them.